Oh, the weather outside is, thank you, but the fire is so, oh, thank you so much. And since we know a place to go. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Davey Deathray here with another special Christmas time movie review. That's right, this holiday season I'm taking a look at all 3 studio films with the Black Christmas name in reverse order. If you missed the previous review, I tore into the 2019 version of Black Christmas for being poorly written, blandly acted, and near criminal in its use of the camera. I'll make sure to drop a card right here so you can check that one out if you'd like. You know, here on the channel, I usually cover stuff that I enjoy, music, movies, things that I want to lift up, so it was actually pretty fun and different for me to watch something for the first time, not enjoy it at all, and really just have at it in the review. But before we get going with this review, please do me a favor and click that like button if you enjoy what you see here. You know, the channel is still so new and every little bit of engagement really does help, so I thank you in advance. Today we're jumping into the 2006 release of Black Christmas, written and directed by Glenn Morgan, and this one is an actual remake this time. Not only that, it also adds some lore to the story. And just like with 2019's Black Christmas, this was my very first experience with the 2006 film. I really don't have any good reason for putting it off. I think maybe I just, loved the original so much. I heard mixed reviews and thought I'll get around to it at some point. But I'm really glad I did, especially to wash that terrible taste of the 2019 version out of my mouth. The film stars Michelle Trachtenberg, Lacey Chabert, Katie Cassidy, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and original Black Christmas alum Andrea Martin as the sorority mother Miss Mack. Similar to the original 1974 classic, this film finds our sorority sisters hanging out at their house getting ready to branch off for Christmas break. Now, their house also happens to be the childhood home of our psycho killer, Billy Lenz. Billy has a history of violent behavior, and he's been plotting his escape from the asylum he's been locked up in for the last 15 years. But little does he know that there is already a vicious, unhinged intruder in his old home, giving him a head start. Will our confined college Christmas co-eds keep the killers cooking? Or will they put an end to their sick and twisted holiday tradition? The movie came out right at the beginning of that horror remake boom in the early 2000s. Previous to this, you had the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2004 Dawn of the Dead, and then right after this we've got Rob Zombie's Halloween in 2007, a Friday the 13th remake in 2009, and the very difficult to finish A Nightmare on Elm Street from 2010. Looking back with the benefit of hindsight, I think this one stands pretty tall amongst that crop of remakes, but it certainly has its issues that prevent it from being a classic in its own right. And nothing illustrates those issues quite like going through the trivia section on the movie's IMDb page. Time and time again, it shows us that there was a ton of dysfunction between the producers and the filmmakers. Which is really nothing new if you're familiar with how the Weinsteins operated, especially in horror. A couple examples of studio interference are, shooting scenes behind the director's back to use in advertisements without any intention of ever including them in the final cut of the film. And they also introduce some darker elements of Billy's backstory, like the incestuous relationship with the mother, the fact that Agnes is his sister daughter and not just his half-sister. And in fact, Billy wasn't even in the original script. He was to have died in the asylum before the events of this film, meaning that Agnes, spoiler alert, was meant to be the only killer the entire time. The studio even pushed for the infamous skin cookie scene, which, depending on how you feel about it, could be a plus or a minus. Getting into what I liked about the film, the writing here with the sorority sisters is actually pretty dang good. I believe that each one of these characters are wholly unique. They've got their own quirks, their own backstories. Some of them kind of pair off as more friendly with one another, and then you've got some tensions within the group as well. It's all just really believable as a group of girls that have been living in this house for years. And if they ever get out of line and need to be set straight, we've got Miss Mack, played wonderfully by Andrea Martin, who portrayed Phyllis in the original Black Christmas. I love seeing alumni come back to a franchise. For me, it just provides that connective tissue to the original, And as an added bonus here, you can tell that Andrea is really having a fun time with the role. She fits right in with this group. Moving on to the gore, there is a pretty awesome mix here. Sometimes we see every little detail, other times we just get the splatter or the aftermath, and there's even a few instances where the camera cuts away almost immediately after impact. So there's something for everyone. And trust me, even though there are a handful of off-screen kills here, this film does not shy away from being gross and memorable. And for those of you that are concerned that this film might not be gory enough for you, I've just got 2 words. Skin cookies, people. Skin cookies. In fact, this film is the king of the blood splatter. There are multiple effective uses of what can only be described as quick and sudden blood explosion. The horny Santa in the asylum, NASCAR daughter in the car while Miss Mac scrapes ice off the windshield, and the coroner in the final act. It's a very stylistic use of the gore, and in my opinion, it really helps this film stand out. And before we move on, I just gotta say how happy I am that they brought the plastic bag back and really had a good time with it. You know, there's just something so dirty and brutal and uncomfortably realistic about it that it gave me a smidge of that feeling that I got from the original. In my previous review of 2019's Black Christmas, you'll remember that the cinematography and that overuse of the push in, push out just made me want to cry, but thankfully this time we've got a really nice blend of modern filmmaking and that 70s style that's just a little better measured. Specifically, there are some POV shots here that are absolutely perfect, and they even look like they were lifted right out of the original film. They even use those 70s style zooms and those odd, almost Dutch angles in a way that's well placed and not overused. But a film can't look great without creative lighting and exceptional production design, and right off the bat, this film exudes that Christmas feeling. The warm glow of the Christmas lights with the reds and greens, and a little hint of that yellow throughout to remind us that our jaundiced killer Billy is always watching. And when it comes to production design, there are some flashback scenes here where Billy's house and everything in it just really put you in that moment of time. Now that I've praised what I liked about the movie, we are gonna get into some negatives. Okay, so when it comes to story, I'm one of those horror fans that likes some of the mystery to remain. For example, to me, Dr. Loomis telling people about his experiences with Michael and his perception of Michael is way more intriguing than actually seeing it happen. You see, to me, it's far less interesting to show those interactions because it spoils the mystique. And in this movie, we see a lot of Billy, his family. We learn so much about his past that it just lessens the creep factor compared to the original. I go with the Jaws rule here. Don't show too much, at least not until later on in the film. But hey, that's a taste thing. If it works for you, great. Also, there's a weird continuity issue with the flashbacks because we're told that Agnes was born in 1982, which would put her in her early to mid-20s during the film's events, but she looks like she's 50. Now, I don't know if this has to do with studio meddling from the Weinsteins or whatever it was, but it really does take something away from the story. And while the film brings back the disturbing phone calls that were so effective in the original, there's this really odd digital manipulation with the voices. You know, in the original, you get the sense that this could be somebody with multiple personalities that's having a total break. But in this film, it straight up sounds like audio that was manipulated on a computer, which is a shame because, again, it lessens the creep factor. The movie also threw me for a loop with a sex tape side plot, which I don't even know why this is in here, other than to make our main characters think that maybe sex tape boyfriend has something to do with what's going on in the house. But really, as an audience member, you know exactly what's going on at this point, so there's no mystery, it doesn't really bring anything to the table, and it pales in comparison to the serious issues that were brought up in the original Black Christmas. Now, in my review of the 2019 version of the film, I mentioned how much I loved the title card. It was pretty much the only thing I liked about the film because it reminded me so much of the original. But here, when it comes to title cards, we're looking at pretty much the polar opposite. We have an awesome opening scene, a very impactful kill that kind of catches you by surprise, and then it's completely undercut by this. What happened here? Did they just ask someone's 16-year-old kid to pick a cool font and then ran with it? And I know it's a small gripe, but first impressions are everything. So when you give me that opening scene and then that title card, it just lessened my expectations moving forward, and it's something they could have easily done better. So what are my final thoughts on Black Christmas '06? Do I recommend it? And where do I think it stands amongst the franchise? Well, for me, it's clearly a mixed bag, but if you appreciate the grimier, sleazier brand of horror, then this movie is absolutely for you because it certainly has its shock value. If, however, you appreciate subtlety and a little bit more of that middle of the road kind of horror, then you may find that certain aspects of this film push it a little bit too far for you. But I do still think there's plenty of fun to be had, and it is worth watching at least once to see what you think. If I gave the film a letter grade, I would say it's a solid C plus B minus. I watched it twice in preparation for this review so I could really soak it all in, and while I'm not sure if it's gonna make it into my regular rotation of Christmas time horror films, I wouldn't be against throwing it on if somebody hadn't seen it before. That's gonna do it for my review of the second Black Christmas movie, wedged right between the awesome classic and that dreadful 2019 version. And that's where I'd put the film, just kind of right there in the middle. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, but one thing's for damn sure, I'm very happy that I finally sat down and watched this one. So now is the time for you guys to hop in that comment section below and let me know what you think of Black Christmas '06. Do you think they pushed the gore too far? Do you wish they took it even further? Do you think that they do a good job of honoring the original while taking it that next step? Let me know where you fall on that spectrum. I'd love to get that conversation going with you. And next week, we've got the big one, the granddaddy. Black Christmas 1974 is dropping on Christmas, people. And please, if this is your first time checking out one of my videos, or maybe you've seen a few and you just haven't subscribed yet, why don't you consider clicking that button? You know, things are still really new here for us, but all of that interaction really does help and we greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for coming by. Until next time, I've been and will continue to be Davey Deathray. Take care.